Hercules stands on the brink of a task that defies mortal comprehension. His final labor is not a simple theft, but a journey to the edge of the world itself. He must steal the golden apples from a divine garden guarded by an unsleeping dragon and watched over by nymphs of the evening. This quest will force him to bargain with a titan who holds up the sky and to outwit the gods themselves. By the end of this story, you will understand the brilliant trick that secured a hero's freedom against impossible odds. How did a man outsmart the very forces of the cosmos, and what does it truly mean to carry the weight of the world? What would you be willing to endure for a chance at redemption? For 11 brutal tasks, Hercules had pushed his body and spirit to their absolute limits. He had faced the Nemean lion, a beast whose hide was impervious to mortal weapons, and he had strangled it with his own hands. He battled the many-headed Hydra, a creature that grew 2 new heads for every one he severed. He captured the Cyrenian hind, an animal so swift it could outrun an arrow, and he cleaned the Augean stables, a monument to filth, in a single day by diverting 2 rivers. Each labor was a fresh nightmare of strength and cunning, a confrontation with monsters and madness that left its own unique scar. This was not a series of glorious adventures, but a grueling penance for a terrible crime he committed in a fit of divine-induced madness. Every victory was a reminder of his guilt, and every monster slain was a shadow of the demons he carried within. Now, after all that blood and toil, a single task remains. This final labor is the key to his freedom, the one act that can wash his slate clean and grant him redemption. But if he fails here, every ounce of pain he has endured, every life he has risked, and every horror he has overcome will have been for nothing. All of it rests on stealing a piece of fruit from a garden at the edge of the world. His freedom depended on a crime born from divine jealousy. The goddess Hera, who despised Hercules for being the living proof of her husband Zeus' infidelity, finally snapped. She cast a madness upon him, a terrifying fog that clouded his mind and twisted his perception. In this horrific state, Hercules did not see his beloved wife and children. He saw monstrous shapes, terrifying enemies threatening his home. In a blind, heroic fury, he fought back, and when the fog finally lifted, he was surrounded by the devastating aftermath. He had single-handedly murdered his own family. The horror of that moment is almost impossible to grasp. The strongest man in the world, brought to his knees not by a monster, but by the shattering truth of his own actions. This was not a simple tragedy. It was a divine punishment designed to break him forever. Seeking guidance, or perhaps just punishment, he traveled to the Oracle of Delphi. The Oracle did not condemn him to death. Instead, she gave him a purpose for his suffering. He was to travel to Turin and place himself in the service of his cousin, King Eurystheus. For 10 years, he would do whatever the king commanded. Eurystheus was not a brave or noble king. He was a petty and often cowardly man who saw in Hercules a threat to his own power. The 12 labors he devised were not random chores. They were a carefully crafted series of impossibilities. Each task was meant to be a death sentence, sending Hercules to confront the most terrifying beasts and accomplish the most Herculean feats imaginable. Slaying the Nemean lion was meant to kill him. Cleaning the Augean stables in a day was meant to humiliate him. The goal was either his glorious death or his utter failure, either of which would erase the shame Eurystheus felt in his presence. But there was a deeper magic at work. Through these acts of supreme effort and penance, Hercules could achieve something rare in the ancient world: catharsis. By enduring these trials, by facing death again and again for a kingdom that despised him, he could purify his soul. Each labor was a step on a path away from the monster Hera had made him, and back toward the hero he was destined to become. His redemption was not a gift. It was something he had to build with his own 2 hands, one impossible task at a time. For this 11th labor, the king presented a demand so audacious it seemed less a task and more a divine jest. Hercules was not sent to slay a beast or clean a stable. He was ordered to steal. His target was the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides, and this single command was a masterpiece of impossibility. Every previous labor had been a test of strength or stamina, a battle against a physical foe. This was something else entirely. This was a challenge that twisted the very rules of the world. The garden was not merely hidden or far away. It existed at the absolute edge of the known world, a place of twilight where the sky met the earth, but its location was only the first layer of the problem. The apples themselves were not simple fruit. They were objects of immense cosmic power, a wedding gift from Gaia, the primordial Earth Mother, to the goddess Hera. To even touch one was an act of profound sacrilege, an insult to the queen of the gods herself, and the guardians made any previous monster seem trivial. The Hesperides, the nymphs of the evening, were the divine caretakers of the grove, their watchful eyes complemented by a far more terrifying sentry. Ladon, the dragon, coiled around the tree. He was not a beast with 1 or 2 heads, but 100, each one sleepless, each one deadly. This was not a test of muscle. It was a test of wit, of guile, of finding a way to outsmart the very fabric of divinity. How could a mortal man, no matter how strong, hope to succeed where even the gods might hesitate to tread? These apples were far more than just golden fruit on a branch. They represented immortality itself, a taste of the divine that could grant eternal life. Forged from the pure essence of the earth, they were a gift from Gaia to Hera, a symbol of the queen of the gods' own power and eternal youth. To possess one was to hold a piece of the cosmos in your hand, a treasure so potent that its very existence was a carefully guarded secret. The golden hue was not a mere color, but a reflection of their impossible purity, a shimmering promise that defied the decay and fragility of the mortal world. Their significance rippled far beyond that secluded garden. You might recall the story of the Judgment of Paris, a contest that would ultimately ignite the Trojan War. The goddess of discord, Eris, threw a single golden apple into a wedding feast, an apple inscribed with the words "for the fairest." 3 goddesses immediately claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Their bitter rivalry over this one piece of fruit led to a world-shattering conflict. This was the power of the apples. They were not just objects of desire, they were catalysts for chaos, symbols of a beauty so absolute it could make goddesses betray one another and set nations ablaze. So when Hercules was sent to steal not one, but several of these divine artifacts, he was not just committing a simple theft. He was attempting to pluck the very symbols of divine authority from the heart of his greatest enemy's sacred space. The consequences of success would be unimaginable, a rebellion against the cosmic order. The consequences of failure, however, were the only thing he could afford to consider. Deep within this twilight realm, the garden was tended by its first line of defense, the Hesperides. These were not simple gardeners, but nymphs of the evening, divine beings born from a union of colossal forces. Their father was the Titan Atlas, the very being condemned to hold up the weight of the sky for all eternity. Their mother was Hesperus, the spirit of the sunset herself. This heritage made them creatures of the in-between, born from the meeting of the timeless Titan and the fleeting, beautiful moment of dusk. Their names echoed their purpose: Eagle, which meant radiance; Erythea, the red one; and Hesperia, the evening star. They were the very embodiment of the garden's golden, otherworldly light. Imagine them not as stern warriors, but as gentle caretakers, their voices like soft chimes on the wind as they moved between the trees. They watered the roots with nectar and sang lullabies to the very soil, their initial dedication springing from a place of innocence and love. This was their home, a beautiful prison of their own making, a paradise they were born to protect. They were the gentle face of an impossible security system, a celestial charm that made the garden feel less like a fortress and more like a dream. But even the most beautiful dream can be a trap, and their presence added a layer of moral complexity to Hercules' task. Could he really deceive these serene daughters of the sky, or would their gentle watchfulness prove to be the most formidable obstacle of all? But the true guardian of the garden was a creature of pure primordial terror. Coiled around the base of the golden apple tree was the dragon Ladon, a being far older and more dreadful than any beast Hercules had yet faced. This was no simple serpent. Ladon was an offspring of the ancient titans Phorcys and Cetus, deities of the hidden dangers of the sea, making him a brother to some of mythology's most infamous monsters, including the Gorgons whose gaze could turn a man to stone. His heritage was one of pure chaos and abyssal fear. Imagine 100 serpentine necks, each one thicker than a man's torso, writhing in a constant hypnotic dance. At the end of each neck was a head with eyes like molten brass and fangs that dripped with a venom so potent it could wither the very earth. His scales were not like those of a common lizard. They were plates of obsidian that shimmered with an unnatural light, forming an armor that no mortal weapon could hope to pierce. But Ladon's most fearsome trait was not his size or his venom. It was his eternal vigilance. Unlike a creature that could be waited out or ambushed in its sleep, Ladon never slept. Not a single one of his 100 heads ever closed its eyes. They were in a perpetual state of watchfulness, each head scanning a different part of the garden, leaving no blind spot, no moment of vulnerability. And if that was not terrifying enough, each of those heads spoke in a different tongue, a babbling chorus of every language known to gods and men. The sound was a constant, low roar of whispered secrets, ancient curses, and common pleas, a cacophony that meant stealth was utterly impossible. To approach was to be heard. To be heard was to be met with 100 sets of eyes and a wall of venomous fury. This was the ultimate watchdog, a sentry designed by the cosmos itself to make the impossible truly impossible. So where exactly was this impossible garden hidden? It lay in the furthest reaches of the west, a place where the sun dipped below the edge of the world and painted the sky with the colors of eternity. This was not a location you could find on any map. It existed beyond the known world, often envisioned nestled within the peaks of the Atlas Mountains, where the earth itself stretched upward to meet the heavens. The journey there was a passage into a dream. The very air began to shimmer with a golden haze, thick with the scent of blossoms that never knew decay and the rich, intoxicating perfume of ambrosia. Trees bore leaves of shimmering jade and silver, and the grass underfoot was like a carpet of emerald velvet, each blade seeming to hum with a soft inner light. This was a sanctuary untouched by mortal seasons. There was no autumn here, no falling leaves or winter frost. Time itself flowed differently, like honey dripping from a spoon, slow and sweet and eternal. The light was perpetual, a soft twilight glow that cast long, gentle shadows and made everything appear both incredibly real and impossibly distant. It was a bubble of divine reality, a pocket of creation where the rules of nature were rewritten by the hands of gods. To step into this garden was to leave the world of men behind entirely, entering a realm of such profound peace and beauty that any thought of violence or theft felt like a blasphemy. This was the perfect prison for a treasure that could grant eternal life, a paradise so serene it disarmed all intention of taking what did not belong to you. Hercules would not be fighting his way in through force. He would have to find a way to navigate this breathtaking trap without shattering its perfect and perilous peace. For the first time in his long and brutal trials, Hercules was completely lost. He stood at the edge of the world, a hero with the strength to strangle monsters, yet utterly powerless in the face of a simple question. Where was the garden? He possessed no map, no divine clue, and no path forward. The apples of the Hesperides were a myth within a myth, a secret guarded by the gods themselves. His legendary muscles were useless here. He could not punch his way to the answer or wrestle a location from the empty air. This was a test of a different kind of strength, one he had to cultivate from a place of humility and patience. So began his long, wandering journey, a period of frustrating search where every road seemed to lead to another dead end. He questioned every shepherd on every lonely hillside, every sailor in every forgotten port. He followed whispers and rumors, only to find himself at the foot of a mountain that held nothing but rock and sky, or on a beach that faded into an endless, empty sea. The frustration must have been immense. After all he had endured, his freedom was being withheld not by a monster, but by his own ignorance. This was the true beginning of his final labor, a lesson in the fact that the greatest obstacles are often not the ones you can see and fight, but the ones that are hidden in shadow. He could not succeed by being the strongest man alive. He had to become the most resourceful. His salvation depended not on his fists, but on his ability to listen, to learn, and to ask for help from the most unexpected of sources. His only hope lay in capturing a god. After countless dead ends, a whisper finally led Hercules to the shore of a vast gray ocean. Here, he was told, lived Nereus, the ancient old man of the sea. This was no ordinary deity. Nereus was a primordial sea god, known for his perfect truthfulness and his profound knowledge of all the world's deepest secrets. He knew every hidden current, every lost island, and the location of the garden at the edge of the world. But his knowledge was not given freely. Nereus was a master of evasion, blessed with the power of prophecy and a far more frustrating ability, the power to change his shape at will. To get the truth, Hercules would have to catch him, and then he would have to hold on. He found the old god sleeping in a sun-warmed cove, looking like a weathered fisherman. The moment Hercules' hands closed around him, the real struggle began. The serene cove erupted into chaos. The god's form dissolved into liquid seawater, slipping through Hercules' mighty grip. As the hero tightened his hold, the water turned to scalding fire, licking at his skin with divine heat. Then the fire coalesced into the snarling form of a giant panther, claws raking at his arms. Still, Hercules held fast. The panther became a slithering serpent, then a towering tree with roots grasping at the earth, and then a rushing torrent of a river. It was a battle of pure, unyielding endurance against the very essence of nature. Hercules, his muscles screaming, his mind reeling from the relentless transformations, did not fight back. He simply held on. He endured the searing heat, the tearing claws, the crushing weight of the water. He was an anchor in a storm of shapes, a monument of stubborn will. Finally, the transformation slowed. The struggling forms grew weaker. The ancient god, exhausted by his own cosmic effort, returned to his original shape, panting and defeated. He had met a force even greater than his own protean nature, the unwavering tenacity of a hero with nothing left to lose. In that moment of surrender, Nereus spoke the truth Hercules so desperately needed. He revealed the secret path to the garden of the Hesperides, a route no mortal could have ever discovered alone. But then he delivered the true blow, the information that made the entire previous struggle seem simple. He told Hercules that he could not simply walk into the garden and take the apples. The divine guardians and the 100-headed dragon made that a fool's errand. There was only one being in all of creation who could safely enter that sacred grove and pluck that golden fruit, the Titan Atlas, who held up the sky, and who was, not so coincidentally, the father of the Hesperides themselves. The quest was no longer about finding a location. It was about convincing a prisoner of the cosmos to do the one thing he desired most, to set down his eternal burden. The path to Atlas led Hercules on a detour that would test his character as much as his strength. His journey took him to the desolate, wind-scoured peaks of the Caucasus Mountains, a place of stark punishment and eternal suffering. There he found a sight that dwarfed any monster he had ever faced. Chained to the cold rock was the Titan Prometheus, the very being who had defied Zeus to bring the gift of fire to humanity. His crime was compassion, and his sentence was a horror beyond mortal comprehension. Each day, a monstrous eagle with feathers like darkened iron would descend from the sky. It would tear open the Titan's side and feast upon his liver, the seat of passion and emotion in the ancient world. And each night, as the eagle flew away, Prometheus's divine flesh would heal, only for the entire agonizing cycle to begin again at dawn. This was not a battle of strength, but a perpetual torture designed to break a spirit that had dared to challenge divine authority. Hercules saw not a defiant rebel in that moment, but a being in endless, excruciating pain. The hero did not hesitate. He notched an arrow into his mighty bow, drew the string, and with a single, perfectly aimed shot, he sent the eagle tumbling from the sky, freeing Prometheus from his daily torment. Then, with his immense strength, he shattered the unbreakable chains that bound the Titan to the mountain. This was not part of his labor. It was an act of pure mercy, a decision to alleviate suffering simply because he had the power to do so. In that moment of liberation, Hercules proved his heroism was not just about completing tasks, but about making a choice for compassion, and that choice would yield an unexpected reward. Grateful beyond measure, Prometheus shared a piece of crucial wisdom, a secret that would become the key to navigating the impossible task ahead. He warned Hercules never to retrieve the apples himself. The garden's divine magic and the hundred-eyed vigilance of Ladon made direct theft a suicide mission. Instead, he must seek out Atlas and offer the Titan a bargain he could not refuse, a temporary taste of the freedom he had been denied for eons. This advice was more valuable than any weapon, a strategic insight born from the mind of a Titan who understood the cunning of the gods. Hercules had gone to the mountain seeking a path, and he left with a plan, one forged in an act of mercy that would change the fate of his entire quest. Finally, after a journey that spanned the known world and delved into the realm of the divine, Hercules stood before the Titan himself. The sight was enough to steal the breath from any mortal. There, on a desolate peak where the air was thin and the stars felt close enough to touch, stood Atlas. He was not merely a large man, he was a geological feature, a living mountain. His shoulders, broad as continents, were bent under a weight that defied all understanding. He did not hold up a simple blue sky with fluffy clouds. Upon his shoulders rested the entire celestial sphere, the vast, crystalline dome to which the stars and planets were fixed. The sheer, crushing mass of it was a physical pressure you could feel in your own bones just by looking at him. This was his eternal punishment for leading the Titans in their war against Zeus, a sentence of infinite strain with no hope of parole. Hercules approached this primordial prisoner, and he presented the Titan with a proposal born from Prometheus's wisdom. He asked Atlas to retrieve the golden apples from the garden that his own daughters tended. For the first time in an age, a flicker of something other than exhaustion crossed the Titan's immense face. It was the spark of a cunning, ancient intelligence. Atlas saw not a hero on a quest, but an opportunity. He would gladly fetch the apples, he declared, but there was one non-negotiable condition. Someone had to hold the sky while he was gone. The proposal was a trap so obvious it was almost an insult. Atlas, the father of the Hesperides, could walk right past the dragon Ladon without a fight. He could simply ask his daughters for the fruit. His journey would be a simple errand, while Hercules would be left performing the most grueling labor imaginable. The Titan's offer was a perfect snare. If Hercules agreed, he would be trapped, his mighty muscles straining against a weight that could grind a god to dust. What was to stop Atlas from simply walking away forever, leaving the hero to a fate worse than any monster's lair, an eternity of silent, crushing isolation under the stars? The apples were within reach, but the cost of grasping for them might be his own freedom, exchanged for a burden that was never meant for mortal shoulders. Hercules made a choice that defied all mortal instinct. He agreed. Stepping forward onto the rocky summit, he prepared to take the celestial sphere from the Titan. Atlas did not gently hand over the burden. With a grunt of effort, he shifted, and the weight of the cosmos began to transfer. The moment it left Atlas' shoulders and settled onto his own, Hercules understood true agony. This was not the weight of a mountain, it was the pressure of existence itself. Every constellation, every distant sun, every swirling galaxy etched into that crystalline dome now pressed down upon him. His bones, which had withstood the grip of giants, groaned under a force that threatened to compress him into a single point of nothingness. His legendary muscles, carved from a lifetime of battle, strained not against a beast but against infinity. Imagine the entire ocean, from its sunlit surface to its lightless trenches, focused into a single, unyielding point on the back of your neck. That was the first shocking sensation. Then came the deeper, more insidious pressure, the feeling of the very fabric of space and time leaning into him, trying to erase him from reality. He could not move. He could not adjust his stance. A single misstep, a momentary lapse in concentration, and the sky would shatter, or he would be crushed into dust. His breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. Sweat poured from his brow, not from heat, but from the sheer mental and physical exertion of containing the universe. This was a battle of pure will. There was no enemy to strike, no monster to outwit. There was only the immense, silent, crushing weight and the absolute requirement to endure. Every second stretched into an eternity of strain, a test that made his fight with the Hydra seem like a child's game. He was no longer a hero on a quest. He was a temporary pillar, holding reality aloft with nothing but his own indomitable spirit. And as Atlas strode away, free for the first time in eons, Hercules was left alone with the stars, wondering if his greatest labor had just become his final, eternal prison. Time stretched into an agony of stone and stars. For Hercules, every heartbeat was a monumental effort against the crushing silence of the cosmos. Just as his will began to fray at the edges, a shadow fell across the mountain peak. Atlas had returned. In his hand, he held 3 apples, but they were not merely golden fruit. They pulsed with a soft, internal light, casting shifting patterns across the Titan's ancient face. The sight of them was a promise of freedom, a relief so profound it was almost painful. Yet the look in Atlas' eyes was not one of a weary errand runner ready to resume his duty. It was the gaze of a creature tasting liberty for the first time in millennia and finding it intoxicating. He did not move to take back the sky. Instead, he smiled, a slow, cunning expression that held no warmth. He would take the apples to King Eurystheus himself, he declared. It was only fair after his long journey. The true horror of the situation crashed down upon Hercules with a force greater than the celestial sphere itself. This was not a simple delay, it was a betrayal. Atlas had no intention of resuming his burden. He was free, and he planned to stay that way, leaving the hero to shoulder his eternal punishment. Hercules was trapped, his body a living prison, his strength the very chain that bound him. To struggle was to risk collapsing the heavens. To submit was to be forgotten, a new Atlas, a mortal footnote in a story of Titan deceit. The physical challenge was over. The true labor had just begun, a battle not of muscle but of pure, desperate cunning. How could a man outsmart a god when he could not even move an inch? The weight of the cosmos was crushing his spirit, but Hercules' mind was racing, free and sharp. He could not win this struggle with force, so he would win it with a performance. He let out a low, pained groan, a sound that was only partly an act. "Very well, Atlas," he managed to say, his voice strained but clear. "I will bear this burden for you as we agreed. But before you leave on your long journey, I have one small request." The Titan, his expression one of triumphant curiosity, leaned in slightly. Hercules continued, his words measured and careful. "Could you take the sky back for just a single moment? This pad on my shoulders has slipped, and the raw pressure is grinding my bones to dust. I just need to adjust it for comfort so I can endure my long watch." It was a lie so simple, so utterly human, that the ancient Titan never saw it coming. Atlas, holding the glittering apples and drunk on his newfound freedom, felt a surge of magnanimous pity. What was one more moment of a burden he had borne for eons, especially when it would secure his permanent release? It seemed a trivial price. With a shrug that shifted the stars, he agreed. He stepped forward, placed the golden apples on the ground, and bent his immense shoulders once more beneath the celestial sphere. The moment the weight transferred from Hercules back to the Titan, the hero did not collapse in relief. He moved with a speed born of absolute necessity. He snatched the 3 apples from the ground, their divine warmth seeping into his palm, and then, without a single glance back, Hercules began to run. He did not sprint in a blind panic, but with the focused, powerful stride of a man whose every step was taking him closer to redemption. The last sound Atlas heard was not a triumphant taunt, but the fading footfalls of a mortal who had outsmarted eternity itself. The Titan was left alone on the peak, the familiar, infinite weight settling back onto his shoulders, the brief, beautiful taste of freedom replaced by the bitter understanding that he had been deceived. Hercules' trick was not one of magic or violence, but of psychology. He appealed to the Titan's arrogance and his momentary sense of security, using the villain's own perceived victory as the very instrument of his downfall. The hero had carried the weight of the world, and in the end, the lightness of his own cunning had set him free. Hercules did not return to Turin's in a triumphant procession, but as a man finally returning a borrowed tool. The 3 golden apples rested in his grasp, their otherworldly glow a stark contrast to the dusty, mortal road. He strode into the throne room of King Eurystheus, his body still humming with the memory of celestial weight. The king, who had sent him to his death a dozen times over, took one look at the divine fruit and shrank back in his throne in pure, unadulterated terror. He saw not a hero's trophy, but a cosmic indictment. To accept these apples was to accept a piece of property belonging to the queen of the gods, Hera herself, his greatest patron and Hercules' most bitter enemy. The man who had demanded this impossible prize was now too afraid to even touch it. With a trembling hand, he refused them, ordering Hercules to take them away. The labor was complete, the theft successful, but the object of the quest was now a hot coal that no mortal dared to hold. The ultimate symbol of eternal life had become utterly toxic in the hands of men, a treasure that guaranteed not glory but a god's wrath. Here lies the profound irony of this entire epic struggle. Hercules had journeyed to the edge of the world, wrestled a sea god, freed a titan, and held up the sky, all for a prize that was never meant to be kept. The value was never in the possession of the apples, but in the monumental effort of their acquisition. The true labor was the journey, the suffering, and the growth Hercules underwent to prove he was worthy of redemption. The apples were merely the proof of that transformation, a receipt for services rendered. Almost as soon as they were rejected by the king, the goddess Athena, embodiment of wisdom and strategic prowess, appeared. With a calm and knowing grace, she collected the golden fruit from Hercules. She did not scold or punish him for the theft. Instead, she acted as a divine courier, returning the apples to their rightful place in the garden of the Hesperides, seamlessly restoring the cosmic order. The dragon Ladon resumed its watch, the Hesperides continued their gentle tending, and the garden returned to its timeless state, as if a mortal had never trespassed. The entire harrowing cycle of quest and retrieval was, in the eyes of the gods, a closed loop. Hercules had proven his worth not by what he brought back, but by how far he was willing to go. This final labor was never truly about the apples. It was a test of a different kind of strength, a final examination of a hero's soul. Hercules began his journey as the ultimate strongman, a figure defined by his physical might, capable of strangling lions and wrestling gods. But brute force was useless in a garden at the edge of the world, a place where the real monsters were not hundred-headed dragons, but the intricate traps of divine politics and ancient curses. His entire quest became a masterclass in strategic thinking. He learned to listen to the wisdom of a tortured titan, to endure the shape-shifting of a sea god, and most importantly, to recognize that some burdens are too great to carry alone. When he stood before Atlas, he was no longer just a muscle-bound warrior. He was a strategist, understanding that the key to victory lay not in overpowering the Titan, but in outthinking him. The brilliant trick he played, that simple lie about adjusting his shoulder pad, was the ultimate proof of his transformation. It was a move that required no strength at all, only a deep understanding of his opponent's deepest desire. He used Atlas's own longing for freedom as the very lever to secure his own. This is the profound symbolism of the 11th labor. It represents the hero's journey from raw power to integrated wisdom. Hercules did not abandon his strength, of course. He needed every ounce of it to hold up the sky. But that physical endurance was merely the stage upon which a more important drama unfolded, the triumph of a clever mind over an immortal's arrogance. He proved that true heroism is not just about confronting monsters, but about navigating the complex, often treacherous relationships between gods, titans, and fate itself. The golden apples were merely the MacGuffin, the glittering object that set this internal transformation into motion. The real treasure Hercules brought back was not a piece of fruit, but the hard-won knowledge that even the most impossible task can be conquered when you learn to use your head as well as your hands. What does this tell us about our own seemingly impossible burdens? Perhaps the greatest strength we can cultivate is the wisdom to know when to bear the weight and when to find a smarter way to set it down. But what of the dragon, the garden's first and most fearsome guardian? The ancient myths offer two contrasting fates for the 100-headed Ladon, reflecting the dual nature of the hero's journey itself. In some tales of the labor, Hercules does not merely trick his way past the beast. Faced with the dragon's unblinking vigilance and its chorus of 100 hissing tongues, the hero is forced to fight. He draws his bow, or perhaps his famous club, and in a furious clash he slays the unsleeping serpent, staining the pristine soil of the garden with its primordial blood. This is the version of raw, heroic conquest, where the obstacle is met with overwhelming force and removed from the path. Yet another, more poignant tradition suggests a different outcome. In this telling, Hercules never confronts Ladon directly at all. With Atlas retrieving the apples, the dragon's purpose was circumvented, not defeated. The guardian remained at his post, coiled around the now barren tree, his watchful eyes forever searching for a threat that had already come and gone. This version speaks to a more subtle victory, where the greatest strength lies in avoiding the fight entirely. But the most enduring and beautiful fate for Ladon comes not from the earth, but from the heavens. The goddess Hera, upon discovering the theft of her sacred apples, was consumed by a profound and unexpected grief. Her rage at Hercules was immense, but it was tempered by a deep sorrow for her fallen servant. Ladon had been utterly faithful, a guardian who had never slept, never faltered, and had given his life or his purpose in her service. To honor that loyalty for all eternity, Hera performed a final, gentle act. She gathered the essence of the great dragon and cast it into the night sky. There she fashioned a new constellation, Draco the dragon, coiling its starry form around the northern celestial pole. In this celestial memorial, Ladon was given a new, eternal watch. He became the silent sentinel of the heavens, his 100 heads now transformed into glittering points of light, forever circling the axis of the world. He never sets below the horizon, a constant, shimmering reminder of devotion and loss. So while Hercules walked away with his redemption and the apples were returned to their branch, the true end of the story is written in the stars above us, a dragon's reward for a duty faithfully performed until the very end. The fate of the Hesperides remains one of the quietest mysteries in this thunderous tale. While the epic clash with Ladon or the cosmic trick played on Atlas captures the imagination, the story is strangely silent about the daughters of the evening themselves. Did they stand by, serene and passive, as their father walked into their sacred grove and plucked the fruit they were born to protect? Or did Hercules have to confront them first? The myth offers no clear battle, no record of a charming persuasion. This very absence speaks volumes. Perhaps their role was not one of physical guardianship, but of a deeper, more subtle magic. They were the spirit of the place, the embodiment of its enchanting and disarming peace. To fight them would be like fighting the sunset itself, a futile and tragic act. Hercules, guided by Prometheus's wisdom, likely understood that direct conflict with these divine nymphs would be a profound mistake, an act that would shatter the garden's harmony and alert every power within it. His success may have hinged on avoiding them entirely, using Atlas as his divine key to bypass their watchful grace. Yet another, more somber possibility lingers. If the version of the myth where Hercules slays the dragon Ladon is true, then what became of the Hesperides? Imagine their golden world shattered in an instant. The gentle chimes of their voices replaced by the roar of combat, the pristine soil stained with the blood of their lifelong companion. Their grief would have been absolute, a silent, devastating counterpoint to the hero's triumph. Their paradise, defined by eternal peace, would have been irrevocably broken, not by a theft, but by the violent death of its most loyal guardian. This tragedy adds a layer of profound cost to the victory, a reminder that every heroic conquest can leave collateral damage in its wake. Their ambiguous fate forces us to question what true success looks like in a story woven with such complex threads. Was it a clean, clever victory achieved through cunning, or a brutal, necessary act that forever scarred a corner of the divine world? The silence of the Hesperides echoes long after the apples were taken, a haunting question mark over the price of a hero's redemption. And so Atlas was left alone, the familiar, crushing weight of the celestial sphere settling back onto his shoulders for all eternity. The brief, intoxicating taste of freedom was gone, replaced by the bitter dregs of humiliation. He had been outsmarted, not by a fellow god or a cunning titan, but by a mortal, a being whose life was a flicker compared to his own ageless existence. This was not just a resumption of his punishment, it was a deepening of it. Before, his burden was a sentence from Zeus for losing a war. Now it was also a monument to his own gullibility, a constant, grinding reminder that he had been tricked into taking it back. Imagine the simmering rage of such a primordial being, forced to stand as the butt of a cosmic joke, holding up the very heavens that witnessed his shame. His story did not end there, however. Atlas becomes a permanent fixture in the world's architecture, his name forever synonymous with bearing immense weight. Later myths even tell of the hero Perseus flying past on winged sandals with the head of Medusa. He threatens to turn the Titan to stone, offering a petrified but permanent release from his labor. In some versions, Atlas accepts, transforming into the very stone of the Atlas Mountains in North Africa, his form literally becoming the pillars that separate the earth from the sky. This encounter with Hercules did not just provide a clever solution for a quest, it fundamentally reshaped the destiny of one of the oldest powers in creation. A Titan's eternal fate was cemented by a mortal's wit. Every map that bears his name, every statue of a figure holding a globe, echoes that moment on the mountain peak where a hero's cunning proved heavier than the sky itself. The deeds of Hercules sent ripples through the cosmos, altering the lives of even the most ancient and powerful beings, proving that no act of consequence, however clever, is ever without its price. This single golden apple, a sibling to those Hercules risked everything to steal, would soon ignite a fire that consumed the ancient world. Its story does not end in the tranquil garden of the Hesperides, but at a joyous wedding feast on Mount Olympus, where the gods and goddesses celebrated the union of Peleus and Thetis. One deity, however, was pointedly not invited, Eris, the goddess of discord. Furious at the slight, she decided that if she was not welcome to share in the joy, she would instead share her own special talent. She appeared at the edge of the celebration and without a word rolled a single, shimmering golden apple into the midst of the revelers. Inscribed upon its skin were three simple, devastating words for the fairest. The music stopped, the laughter died, all eyes turned to the fruit, and then to the three most powerful goddesses present, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each, with absolute certainty, believed the apple was meant for her. The wedding feast shattered into a bitter argument as the three immortals demanded Zeus declare a winner. The king of the gods, wisely wanting no part of this divine quarrel, devised a clever escape. He declared that the decision would be made by a mortal, a young Trojan prince named Paris, who was known for his honest judgment. The three goddesses descended to the slopes of Mount Ida, where Paris tended his flocks, and presented themselves before him. But this was no simple beauty contest. It was an auction for his soul. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe to secure his vote. Hera, the queen of the gods, promised him boundless political power and kingship over all the known world. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, offered him unparalleled military glory and invincible skill in battle. Then Aphrodite, the goddess of love herself, stepped forward. She did not offer him power or glory. She offered him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, a man driven by passion rather than politics or war, did not hesitate. He handed the golden apple to Aphrodite. In that moment, he won the favor of love, but he earned the eternal, seething hatred of Hera and Athena. The most beautiful woman in the world, of course, was Helen, the queen of Sparta, wife to King Menelaus. With Aphrodite's help, Paris traveled to Sparta, seduced Helen, and spirited her away to his city of Troy. This single act of theft, fueled by a golden apple, became the catalyst for the Trojan War. Menelaus, enraged, called upon all the kings and heroes of Greece who had once sworn an oath to protect his marriage. 1,000 ships were launched, carrying legendary warriors like Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax to the shores of Troy for a brutal 10-year siege that would shatter heroes and topple a mighty city. The golden apples were never just fruit. They were symbols of such potent, absolute desire that they could make goddesses petty and set nations ablaze. Hercules' labor to retrieve them was not an isolated incident, but a crucial thread in a vast, interconnected tapestry of fate. His successful theft was a prelude to a greater theft, his encounter with a cosmic power setting the stage for a conflict that would define an age. One apple could test a hero's soul, and another could launch 1,000 ships, proving that in the hands of the gods, even the smallest, most beautiful things can carry the weight of destiny. The golden apples shimmer in our imagination, yet they may have grown from seeds planted in the real world. Historians and botanists have long speculated about the earthly fruits that could have inspired such a potent myth. One of the strongest candidates is the quince. In the ancient Mediterranean, this fruit was highly sacred, often associated with Aphrodite herself. When ripe, a quince has a beautiful golden yellow skin and a fragrant, almost floral aroma. It was a traditional offering at weddings, symbolizing love and fertility, which perfectly aligns with the apple's role in the story of Paris and Helen. Unlike a modern eating apple, a raw quince is hard and astringent, requiring patience and cultivation to become sweet and useful. This transformation mirrors the mythical apples themselves, beautiful to behold but holding a power that is not immediately accessible, a treasure that must be earned. Another compelling theory points to the orange. To us, an orange is a common fruit, but to the ancient Greeks it was utterly unknown, a fruit from distant mythical lands like the Far East. If a single orange had found its way to the Mediterranean, its bright, spherical form and vibrant color would have seemed truly miraculous, a literal golden apple from a sun-drenched, otherworldly garden. This theory suggests that the legend may have been a way to process and explain a rare, exotic commodity that defied existing categories. Some researchers even point to a specific, ancient species of apple, perhaps one with a yellowish-golden hue that was later lost through centuries of crossbreeding. The very vagueness of the term apple in ancient texts is the key. The word was often a catch-all for any round, tree-borne fruit. so the legendary golden apples were likely not a single fantastical species, but a mythological fusion of the most precious, beautiful, and mysterious fruits known to the ancient world. Their golden color was less a literal description and more a symbol of their ultimate value, a brilliance born from the meeting of human wonder and the strange, wonderful bounty of the natural world. The immense struggle between hero and cosmos proved irresistible to artists for millennia. On the dusty surfaces of ancient Greek vases, we see the earliest depictions of this labor, not as a grand, sweeping panorama, but as a moment of focused tension. Hercules is often shown already in the act of holding the celestial sphere, his muscles bulging in stark black figures against the terracotta clay. Atlas stands nearby, the golden apples held out, a simple transaction frozen in time. These images capture the core of the myth, the exchange of an impossible burden, with a directness that feels almost like a historical record. The dragon Ladon coils around the tree, his many heads a tangle of lines, a decorative yet menacing pattern that emphasizes his role as a permanent fixture of the garden. This was art as storytelling, a way to make the legend tangible for an audience that knew the tales by heart. The focus was on the pivotal moment of the trick, the climax of cunning that defined the entire quest. Then, with the Renaissance, the interpretation of this labor underwent a profound transformation. Artists were no longer satisfied with simply illustrating the event, they wanted to capture its soul. The physical struggle became a mirror for internal, spiritual conflict. In works by Pollaiuolo and others, Hercules is no longer just a strongman, he is a monumental figure of both power and pathos. The sky he holds is not a simple circle, but a swirling mass of clouds and faint stars, its weight almost palpable. You can see the strain in his carved posture, the tension in his neck, the way his entire body is a single, taut cable of endurance. These painters were masters of human anatomy, and they used their knowledge to show not just what it looked like to hold up the world, but what it felt like. The scene becomes a psychological portrait exploring themes of duty, suffering, and the immense cost of heroism. How does one convey the weight of the cosmos? The Renaissance answer was to show its effect on the human form, making a divine burden achingly, beautifully human. This dramatic scale and emotional depth carried forward into the Baroque period, where artists like Guido Reni amplified the drama to its peak. The compositions became dynamic and theatrical, full of sweeping diagonals and intense chiaroscuro. Hercules might be shown in a moment of supreme effort, his face turned to the heavens in a silent roar, while Atlas gestures with a newfound, energetic freedom. The entire scene is charged with a raw, emotional power, as if the canvas itself cannot contain the epic struggle between the mortal and the divine. Every fold of cloth, every strained muscle, is rendered to maximize the visual and emotional impact, pulling the viewer directly into the heart of the crisis. In the modern era, film has taken up the mantle of depicting this labor, using special effects to make the unimaginable visceral. We see the strain in an actor's face, hear the groan of effort, and watch as digital landscapes bend under the pressure of the sky. The confrontation with Ladon becomes a spectacular battle of computer-generated might, 100 heads spewing fire and venom in a dazzling, chaotic spectacle. Yet, even with these technological advances, the core challenge remains the same as it was for the painter of a Greek vase: how to make an audience believe in and feel the weight of the world. Whether rendered in clay, oil, or pixels, the image of Hercules holding the celestial sphere endures as one of the most powerful in all of art, a universal symbol for any burden that threatens to crush us, and the superhuman strength required to bear it, if only for a while. This final labor was the crucible that forged a demigod into a true immortal. Hercules had spent a decade proving his physical might, but this last task demanded something far greater, a fusion of strength, wisdom, and cunning. By outsmarting Atlas, he demonstrated a quality the gods valued above raw power: intellectual ingenuity. He proved he could think on a cosmic scale, turning a titan's eternal burden into a temporary inconvenience with nothing more than a clever lie. This was the final piece of his redemption arc, the ultimate proof that he was more than the sum of his crimes or his muscles. He had purified himself through service, endured suffering with resilience, and now he had solved a divine puzzle with brilliant strategy. The apples were not the point, his journey to get them was. That journey showed he was ready. It proved he was worthy of a place not in the court of a petty king, but on the peak of Mount Olympus itself. This labor directly unlocked his apotheosis, his transformation from a mortal hero into a full-fledged god. After his mortal life eventually ended, Hercules did not descend to the gloomy underworld like other souls. He ascended. He was welcomed into the pantheon by Zeus himself, reconciled with a forgiving Hera, and even married Hebe, the goddess of youth. His immortality was not a gift, it was a promotion he had earned through 12 impossible labors, with the final act serving as his triumphant thesis defense before the cosmos. He became a symbol of hope for all humanity, a testament that even the most flawed among us, through immense effort and spiritual growth, can achieve the divine. His story asks a profound question of us all. What burdens are you carrying that might, in the end, be building the strength to lift you higher? His path from a desperate, wandering hero to the master of his own fate remains one of mythology's most stunning transformations. He began this final labor with no map and no hope, relying on the wisdom of tortured gods and fallen titans to light his way. He endured the crushing agony of the cosmos itself, a weight meant to grind even immortals into dust. And in his moment of greatest peril, trapped beneath the starry dome, he discovered that his most potent weapon was not his strength, but his mind. The brilliant trick he played on Atlas was the ultimate proof of his growth, a masterstroke of cunning that secured his freedom and completed his long road to redemption. This journey cemented his legacy as the ultimate Greek hero, a figure who embodies the very essence of human potential. His story is not just about slaying monsters, but about enduring unimaginable suffering and emerging wiser and more resilient. It is a timeless testament to the idea that our greatest burdens can forge our greatest strengths, and that no one is beyond the reach of redemption if they possess the courage to face their trials head-on. Hercules teaches us that true heroism is a blend of raw power, strategic intelligence, and an unbreakable spirit. So we turn the question to you after following this incredible saga: which of the 12 labors speaks to you the most? Was it the terrifying battle with the Hydra, the humbling cleaning of the Augean stables, or this final cosmic heist that secured his immortality? Share your thoughts in the comments below.